So like Letitia said, my name is Shanti Mathew. I work at the Public Policy Lab, and we are an innovation lab for government. So essentially what that means is that we do research and design. We partner with government agencies, both at the municipal and the federal level, to consider how to redesign social policies and social services. So we primarily work work with low income and at-risk communities. So that means we mostly work on social services. So social policy, social service delivery, things like affordable housing, mental health services, education, all sorts of things like that. And the reason that we do that is because we sort of have this premise that, you know, there's sort of a gap. There's a gap that exists between what I would call the idealism, if you will, of policymakers and the actual lived experience of people, right? So how do we bring those things together? How do we learn from the lived experience of people, of the public, and combine that with the expertise of policymakers just to make smarter, more meaningful decisions with better experiences for everyone? So community engagement, working with the public, is something that we do all the time. It's our bread and butter, and so this is a great conversation to be a part of. And like Letitia said, the constraints and the realities of working with members of the public become very clear very quickly. And that certainly was true when a few years ago we were asked by the city of Louisville, Kentucky, to come down and to work on a project with their county jail around the issues of the opioid epidemic, because I'm sure we've all heard of. So opioid addiction and jail overcrowding in Louisville. So like Chris mentioned, there are a whole bunch of different ways to do community engagement with different purposes. And so what I'm going to talk about here a bit in this front end is this aspect of more so of interviewing folks, right? So how do you understand the lived experience of members of the public in order to generate insights that lead to meaningful solutions? So here we are in Louisville, Kentucky. Our team literally went to jail a few years ago to understand the experiences of jailed people and the folks who incarcerate them. And immediately upon getting to this door, essentially the team realized, oh my gosh, we don't actually know how to take care of the people that we're interacting with today. We are not set up for this. Because what do you do, right? What does it mean to engage with members of the public or to ask consent for someone who may actually not be able, who actually can't really give you consent for what they're participating in, right? So the Public Policy Lab team sort of immediately scrambled to redo our consent forms. They sort of changed their own policies of, as we were meeting with jailed people, with the people who were in jail, we said, you get to have control over all of our notes. You get to see everything that we're going to do and document today. We gave them control over whether they were photographed and all those sorts of things. We told them, please do not tell us anything that you do not want to be heard by someone who is jailing you. Because we just couldn't promise in this case that our notes were going to be actually truly confidential. We also said, you know, if you just want to sit here, the team negotiated for no correctional officers to be in the room with the team while they conducted the interviews, because we wanted to be advocates for the people that we were interviewing. And we said to our participants, you know, we can just sit here and chat for an hour. Like if you want to come in and you just want to hang out and we can talk or not talk, that's totally fine with us. But we will tell the COs, will tell our leadership that the work happened. We're here to protect this space, right? So we gave them as much control as we possibly could within the constraints that we had. But every single one of them agreed. Every single one, right? And that's where I think the loyalty of us as practitioners continues to kick in, right? Kicks in over and over again. These folks really gave us their trust, and we owed them a lot of respect and our ability to protect them in return. The stories that we heard that we can talk more about here in a bit, if you would like, the stories that we heard were amazing, and they weren't really just about jail, right? People entrusted us with their stories of growing up and the circumstances that they faced and the bad luck that they experienced, people living their normal lives, right? Things about their kids, what they were hoping to do when they got out of jail, what they were learning in jail, what their kids were doing on a given day, right? And in the context of these stories, we began to realize that jail was just, it was one thing in a whole life, right? We all know what that's like. It's one thing, it was just one more thing for them to bear in really what was often a lifetime of trouble and struggle. So we came back to the city with full stories of people's lives. The city was really interested in this narrow view on, like I said, overcrowding and spatial issues in the jail. But we came back with stories of folks' entire lives, not just their jail experience. We made a series of design recommendations for the jail that didn't just include services and intervention in jail, but actually included some interventions outside of jail as well. And these recommendations really were coming out of the lives of the people that we spoke to. So in the work that we do, whether it's in jail or out of jail, whether it's with the affordable housing system here in New York City, or if it's with helping veterans access mental health care services, or a project we're working on right now, helping New Yorkers enroll in public benefits through their local public school system, I really think of our work as messing with systems of power. Honestly, all of these service systems are systems that we've created that have power dynamics that are core to what they are. And what we're really doing when we look at systems, we redesign systems, we redesign, intervention points, or we redesign a form or a piece of paper that we give someone at the DMV, or the script on a phone call line. What we're doing is we're saying who gets access, who has power here, whose voice gets to be heard, who's allowed here, who gets access. What we're really asking is who gets power. And a lot of the work that we do is walking into, when we talk about community engagement, right, we're essentially walking into rooms with folks that have less power when we look at a whole system, to learn something, to do something together, and then translating or taking that stuff into other rooms where people have more power and saying, how do we make something that works for everyone? So a few things that we've learned about how to do this. Like I said, we start with people. That's really always our goal at Public Policy Lab. And we do that by, number one, treating our users as our owners. So we assume that everyone who uses any sort of service is essentially an owner of that service. Because really, in truth, like, who knows more about jail than this woman does, right? Who knows more about jail than the jailed person? Who knows more about jail than correctional officers? Who is more of an expert on her life, right? So we start with people. We say, if we want to learn about jail, if we want to learn about the DMV, if we want to learn about waste management, or we want to learn about New York public schools, we got to go talk to New York City public school staff, because they're the ones who are living it day in and day out. But we also treat our owners as our users. So this gentleman here, this CO from Louisville, he's a pretty large, intimidating guy, you could say. When our team asked him what he thought about the opioid users in the jail, he said this. He said, "I want inmates with mental health and drug issues to go to treatment facilities. Jail is just not a good environment for these individuals." So he's part of the system, he's part of the service, and he, as a correctional officer, who is incarcerating jailed people, he also has challenges. He has desires. He has things that he's trying to do, that he's trying to manage in his own job, and good that he wants for the people that he's working with. So what does it mean to take into correctional officers' needs and create solutions that meet the shared values and needs of frontline staff and end users of a service? And then number 3 is just own your own power. We are all part of these systems as well. We're all part of systems of power. So I think that's the most important thing to realize as we're doing our work. We're part of the system. My job, like I said, is to walk into some rooms where folks have less power than I do. And then I walk into other rooms where I have less power than other people and say, hey, here's what's going to work. Here's a thing that's going to work to meet the needs of all of us. Because really, I would say in some aspects, in some ways, the work that we do is exploitative, right? The work we do, like Chris said, like sometimes we are going to members of the public, we're going to end users, we're going to frontline staff in order to learn something, in order to glean something, in order to say, share your life experience with me so that I can turn it into data, right? It's data, it's an insight, it goes on a Post-it note, it turns into a journey map, it turns into things, artifacts that live in the world. These things get abstracted. And that in and of itself is a powerful action, right? That's taking someone's story and changing it. But I think there's a way to do that with respect and integrity, and that's what I try and mess up at all the time, but what I want to be cognizant of as we're doing the work. So I think ways to do this, ways to acknowledge and mitigate our own power in the process. There's a whole bunch of ways that we experiment with, and like I said, we don't get right all the time. We try to go to people, right? We go to people. We go to their living rooms. We go to neighborhoods. We go to offices. We say, how can we be a guest in your space so that you are the expert? Because you're the expert in your own life, right? We try to be really clear. We've sort of rewritten our consent forms to be really clear about not just the great things that'll happen about working with us, but actually the challenges of working with us, the potential ramifications of working with our team. We always want to compensate people for their time as much as we can. You know, sometimes you're restricted by, regulations with working with frontline staff, but we always try to do something, and that goes to the value add, right? Like, so how do we add value to people's lives? And we try to stay true, right, to people's stories. My job is not to judge anyone's experience of how they got to jail. My job is to be an advocate, is to be jealous for the folks who have given us their trust and their loyalty, is to represent accurately their stories without any sort of judgment on whether any of their circumstances or choices were good or bad. So I think there's a lot of good work to be done here, and it can be much, much better with much more value add for everyone all around if we acknowledge the power dynamics that are at play in all of this. So thanks.